I'm amazed at how much change there's been in the
It's changed
just
so
even in 20
much.
years, and historically 20 years.
Especially these last.
It's like nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And yet it's been this huge sea change. It really has.
I mean, just alone for me, I'll probably cut this out of the video. But because I don't want to be really churchy, anti-churchy. But no, I like my biggest thing is the Mormon Church evolves faster and changes faster than any other religion I've ever seen. And people think it's so locked in stone, or that religion is so this way or that way. And I'm like, polygamy was, I mean, because marriage, eternal marriage and everything, that is the core, that is their main thing. And if we changed polygamy, which was, it wasn't just one of the, I asked my Mormon friends, all my Mormon friends, what do you think about polygamy? Oh, well, they were just wrong about, they don't say, oh, well, that was for a time. They say, oh, well, they were wrong about that, and now it's different.
But that was,
and I'm
that
like,
was...
Yeah, I'm like, that goes to the very, very core.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, and so they changed that, and when I, like, if you go back and you read, like, the old temple ceremonies, and you're like, that was pretty heinous. Like that was pretty, like,
graphic.
very graphic, kind of violent, kind of symbolism and all that stuff. And, you know, when you realize, you know, where that originally came from. But even, like, the change, like, they'll change it, and then they'll change it again, and they'll change it again. And when I was one of the last people, like, when I went on my mission, I went through a live ceremony, and it was still, like, before, actually in Idaho Falls.
Do they not do the live ceremony anymore?
I think they just did it in Salt Lake, or...
I did it in the Salt Lake Temple when I was going on my mission.
I think they used to do it in Manti, I heard.
But even before, but it was before, like, when I went on my mission and took out my endowments and that, it was before they had switched, they had made, like, the really big gentrification. And then, like, on my mission, I remember, like, it came out printed in the paper because people sneak in and they're like, this is how it changed and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay. And then when I got back and I went through again, I was like, wow, this just seems like a completely different thing to me.
What was different?
Well, you've read it, right?
But it's changed like 4 times. I mean,
yeah, major
which,
changes.
Which,
well, now it's like really gentrified. Like there's no barbaric, like, imagery. All that stuff is gone,
Like,
which I think is I think it's a good thing, because I don't really care where it comes from. It's where it ends up that is the important thing to me. And I know my parents, they're getting older. They're not going to change their beliefs. They love their beliefs. They go to the temple all the time. And so being able to remove that from their life is great to me. And now it's more, you know, it's more positive imagery, better kind of things. You know, they can spend, you know, all that social time and whatever. At least, you know, those darker things are gone from it.
Yeah.
And somehow, in some ways, I think it's like the Jews wandering in the wilderness. I mean, you really need generations to die out in some ways. And I know with the polygamy thing, I remember Ron Esplin saying, as hard as polygamy was to start, and it was really hard to get people to do that initially, it was much harder to stop it. And you can see that today, that there's still people that won't stop. And I think this, as far as other issues and gays, I'll be really interested to see where that goes. But you'll have people that won't stop. And if the church ever, you know, officially said
Makes a change,
there will be people who won't do it. And I think you just got to expect that.
That's just how it is. But yeah, like I said before, like the people who are young today are going to be the people who lead the church tomorrow, and they're all like, oh, you know, it's.
And they are.
I understand. You're my brother. You were born this way. I love you. I want you to have happiness. Even if they don't believe in the next life, they at least want you to have happiness in this life.
That's
I don't understand why happiness.
Generation just needs to die.
Yeah.
But because the prophet and the apostles are so old, and the way that they, but I'm just saying, because the way that they pass it down, it's not like they go old and they pass it down to a couple it's like handed a hair down.
Yeah.
So it's such a slow process till it gets to us. You know what I mean?
But they're also old. It dies off pretty fast. You know? They die.
Yeah.
But I mean.
Well, I don't know. We're being cliched in them pretty long.
But I think just in the scheme of, like, if you look at religions as a whole and how long it takes things to change, the Mormon Church changes huge things
and you have to be so
very quickly. It's just like I think our minds just get compressed, you know, into small time. Because 50 years is not a long time when you're talking about the span of a religion or Christianity.
And your generation, this generation that my kids, and you're about all the same age, is noticeably different than my generation was. I really see the contrast. I do. You're much more tuned in spiritually.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, more they choose it more than just doing it. They're more. It seems like what you were saying, like with your bishop. Imagine when you were a teenager, and if you would have gone to your bishop and said, you know, I think I'm a lesbian. With him, you know, it sounds like your bishop was like, I know with my bishop, they try and work with you. They might not agree with you, but they want to work with you and talk with you. I have a feeling if you, when you were his age, you know, and you went and said, you know, I'm a lesbian, they would have been like, we need to get you married next week.
Yeah.
You know,
which what they used to do.
Which they do because
but I think the thing that one of the main things that's driving the change is communication and like because there's been TV and now even more with the internet and blah blah blah, that you can't be isolated. Before you could be like different groups, you could be isolated and you could like, this is what we believe in this, but now pretty much no matter where you are, you have to interact with the rest of the world and you have to see what's going on, and you have to meet people, all sorts of different people.
I think that's where just where that education comes in, though, because they haven't had the internet for so long, and we haven't had access. If you wanted to get access to information, my dad, you know, is like the biggest historian on anything, and he's an atheist. But I mean, like he used to tell me when I talked about this, he's like, Benny, when I was your age, if I wanted to find out something, if I wanted to find out truth, you had to like travel a couple 100 miles to this rare bookstore to find something, and then a lot of times they wouldn't give it to you, or they would, you know, change it. Now all we have to do, I think the problem is you just can't get away with it anymore. They can't. I think they're just moving with it as they should. If you can't get away with something, you know, you're still, if you're working in a store, you still until they get the cameras put in. You know, it's just you have to move with it. You move with the time. You move with the technology. And I just think that they can't get away with it anymore. And that family home evening group that you said that you went to, did you hear of that group called Reconciliation? Affirmation, yeah, Affirmation. But they call themselves Affirmation Reconciliation. I went to them a few times, just because I was so curious to see. And do you know about them? They're a group, and they're so angry about that. To what you're talking about, they're so mad because every single one of them, I would say 90% of them, they get up, they're in this big circle, and they get up and they say, we all have ex-wives and children, and our children hate us, and there's all this division because when we came forth and said that we were gay, we were instructed and given through, you know, divine priesthood blessings that you are to be married. You are to hurry, and that was the answer.
And God will take this.
And God will take this from you as soon as you get married. It will leave. I mean, they very graphically. You know, one of them had his patriarchal blessing and read it when I was in there. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, but I just think that it's a matter of, and I really respect those guys that are there because they believe it still. I mean, they believe a lot of the doctrine, the foundation of it, you know, the restoration, and a lot of those things. And so I just think that, you know, their answers now they're like, man, if we would have had the internet, if we would have had all this access to information, we had no idea that there were other people that were going through this. We thought we were cursed Latter-day Saints. They didn't understand what was going on everywhere. I mean, it's just interesting to listen to these people. I mean, then you feel like your life is so much easier.
Yeah, and with the internet, because the internet was like a big thing. I was always, you know, reading stuff, and like gay Mormon stories and stuff. And so I recognized very early on that people just don't change. So that was just something I wasn't interested in, you know. When I went to my bishop, I was like, you know, he talked about evergreen and stuff, and I was like, people don't change, so I'm not interested in it. I don't think it's healthy. It's not a good mindset. No matter where I go with it, I'm not going to waste my life, you know, thinking, you know, trying to change because it just doesn't work. And, you know, he was sort of like, he didn't totally know everything, so, you know, he hasn't.
So what do you think effect that had? I mean, because when I started, the impetus for this was a guy that Clark was emailing actually committed suicide, and that was, you know, just like within 6 months ago or something. And that's why I was kind of surprised. I was like, that's still happening?